Hey everyone, and welcome back. I'm gonna do something different this time. Okay, this is a puzzle, and it took about 6 months of small chunks and evening sessions when family's asleep, whatever I could squeeze in when the free time allows. And I wish I could say that knowing what I know now, it would not take 6 months to make another one, but I had to accept the long process itself as the main part of the result. In other words, if I streamlined everything and avoided experimenting or stumbling even or just overthinking it, the final would look quite different, for better or for worse. And in the end, I am pretty happy with how this turned out. So I figured I'd share the overall process here because I enjoyed every moment of it. Instead of a scripted dialogue, I'm going to just kind of go over things informally here, and I pulled up my PureRef file, a couple of Blender files that I'm going to show in a second, and then of course this PSD. So starting with the planning process and reference gathering, so this is where it all began. It was this sketch where I wanted to capture the overall composition of a lonely house on a some kind of a concrete man-made jetty foundation, and play around with the light patterns, how the light hit and where it would cast the shadows. And I always thought about adding these trees and everything in behind the place, and maybe even a lighthouse, but the sketch was just a good starting point. So I used that to create this Blender file and used just a basic model here and a couple of assets from Polyhaven, which is a plugin that I highly recommend. And then I lit it in such a way that would match whatever I had in the sketch here. So here it is in overall. Then I went into just paint over the screenshot, and I thought about things like storytelling and how I'm going to get this scene to be a puzzle instead of just a singular concept piece of the house. And as a concept artist, I'm trained to like restrain myself from over detailing or overpopulating something that is meant to be simple. But being a puzzle, it's not going to be simple. And I learned that early on, that this is like a very different thing that I'm used to doing. So I started thinking about how I'm going to throw in the seagulls and what kind of storytelling I'm going to have, whether this captain is going to be investigating the noise that's made outside and he's going to be like, what's going on? But then there's an octopus out there in the back stealing a bottle of wine from his picnic that he was about to have. And just this alone was like enough to get me kind of going to realize that I actually wanted a lot more for the scene, and I still wanted to keep that story, but I was thinking like, hey, this now is really about the center point and about the house, and all these elements that I really want to capture now have to be kind of cropped out, which I didn't like. Just note for myself here, I noted that the focus is on the building, and also this did not really give me many opportunities to play with the lighting or fill in the dark spaces. So even though in the sketch looked good, it was like a really good way of capturing the feeling, and then testing it out, I realized that I really needed to make some drastic changes. So I've changed the camera angle, and of course I refined the 3D model and added a few more elements like the lighthouse and the trees. But overall, the scene began to kind of breathe, and it gave this sense that it's not just about the house anymore. And as I was populating this sketch here, I also was making a list of things that I really wanted to include, like buoys and crabs and a bunch of seashells and a bunch of things like that. So to get all that stuff in there, I really had to expand the scene, because otherwise this would be way too cramped for all of that. So this is where the model came in. So spending time in 3D, I've got the whole scene built up, and only the parts that would be within the camera angle. So the camera angle is here. As far as crabs go, I painted these crabs a few years ago, and I thought maybe sculpting the basic shapes of it and then just projecting this texture would be enough. And that's pretty much how I got away with this crab here. And I put together these pieces and then I parented them. So it's kind of like rigging, but without having to actually rig anything. And that's how I was able to pose these crabs that were dueling with the sticks that they found. Really, all I needed was to just get the color information and the lighting information, because I knew from the start that I was going to rely heavily on my brushwork to complete the look, because otherwise this would obviously not work. It's just too stiff and not lively enough. So then lastly, these lighthouses here, I was just practicing shapes and figuring out like maybe how to design a different kind of lighthouse rather than just the iconic one that we see in the center here. And that's where I thought it would be kind of fun to transfer these sketches onto this lighthouse. Because I briefly met some people from a puzzle publisher a few years ago at a licensing expo, and I'm not sure what their names were, but one of them said that when they pick up a puzzle piece, they have to recognize where it goes. So it has to have something on it. If they would pick up something like this or something like this, they would kind of have to know what's going on or where it goes. It can't just be like this flat, empty space, or at least minimize that as much as possible. And that's been the main driver behind this detail work that I ended up doing. And from the beginning, this was designed to be a puzzle. And I had to think about ways to populate every inch of this canvas and tie it all together into a cohesive scene that just kept the eye moving. And of course, I also wanted to get immersed in the theme myself, because I really enjoyed every moment of this render and doing the heavy brushwork and figuring out how much 3D to use, as well as weaving 3D into my process. The note on the brushes, I always feel like having too many brushes actually slows me down. This is it. This is all I use for both personal and professional work. There's a lot of brushes out there. Personally, over the years, I've tried a lot of them and it just slows me down, especially the ones that I didn't make myself because I don't really know how to fit them. So what did I do? I created some of my own, but then also a lot of them are Cal's brushes or Photoshop's default brushes that I tweaked. And even if there is a better brush for the task, I tend to try using whatever I have on hand or whatever the brush first comes to mind. So what I mean by that is, for example, when I'm rendering this rock here, the first brush that came to mind to create these lines in the rock is my hard round brush. I didn't think about the better brush that could be used for this case. Like I have a triangle brush that might be better for this kind of thing because it has these nice angular edges to it. But I didn't want to worry about it. I just wanted to use what I had on hand, and if I really need a sharper angle, I would just make a sharper angle, or I would just create something that is so imperfect that you can't even tell that this was like a striation line. You can also just say this is random noise of nature. And correcting instead of erasing has been my go-to for the last couple of years now. I used to think about, oh, what brush am I going to use for this area right here? Instead, I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to put down a stroke and then I'm going to correct it instead of undoing and erasing. I still use undo a lot, but it's not going to be holding me back from that train of thought that I have. So as I tend to try using whatever I have on hand or whatever brush first comes to mind, it feels like this. By the time I right click, I have to know what brush I'm going to use. I'm not going to be right clicking and then searching for the right one. I already know that I'm going to pick either the basic stuff or something that's more complicated and custom. I suppose I use this one here and there too. Going back to reference really quick, a lot of these were taken in Oregon Coast. The trees, I really love the way they look. And things are quite gray and dull over here, but at the same time it's very beautiful, and if the right light hits it, it illuminates the fog and the mist. You really have this awesome mood as well. But overall, this is a very coastal looking kind of feel, And down the street from there, there's this Pelican Brewery building that has these vertical slats that are pretty old school, and I really love this look on the modern building, and it's not really looking all that modern, and yet it is. Lastly, when I talk about the jetty and the foundation that the house sits on, and you can tell that the tide reaches all the way up there and it's creating the stain look, and I also really love the shadows that are created underneath, and overall this rugged, weathered kind of look, and all the miscellaneous stuff, like this kind of noise, the stairway, the weathering and the woodwork. So that's it. I'm gonna come back and get into the rhythm of things once our newborn settles in and sleep comes back and our schedule opens up. But I've been keeping up with some sketching here and there, and I will share whatever I can in the meantime. So thank you as always for watching. Until next time.